Good morning. My name is Alec Giles and this is the webinar on the secrets of railings in advanced steel. So I work as a structures consultant at Graitec UK. I originally trained as a mechanical design engineer around 30 years ago and spent about 10 years designing machinery for the steel and aluminium industries. But then I became the CAD manager at the company I was in, looking after 200 or so users, training them in AutoCAD Mechanical, Inventor and Solid Edge. But then I moved to Graitec 10 years ago, and since then I've focused 100% purely on advanced steel, doing nothing else. Why should you choose Graitec as your business partner? Well, Graitec are unique in being able to offer products across the entire life cycle of your designs and products. We split that into 4 areas. First of all, you have Graitec Create, where you're using Autodesk products and to design your own output and products, but those are enhanced with Graitec Power Packs. Graitec released Power Packs with a suite of extra tools and bells and whistles for advanced steel, Revit, Inventor and Volt. And these can add a significant power and automate important daily tasks. Secondly, once you've got your basic design, you need to check that that design will work in the real world. So you need to simulate your product. So you can use the Graitec Simulate tools, where we have market-leading state-of-the-art software to analyze your products and prove they will work. Finite element analysis, very powerful, but still easy to use. Once you've finished your final design and you're happy with your design, you need to manufacture it. So that becomes Graitec Fabricate. And we have tools and software available there, which will help manage your entire workshop. And that goes from scheduling the tasks in the workshop for the human workers, right through to scheduling and programming tasks for your NC machines, even managing the NC files and feeding the right file to the right machine, translating it if necessary into different formats for different machines, and all the time keeping control of that data. But all those different tasks and all that work will create massive amounts of data in different formats. So you then have Graitec Manage, where we can control all of your work in progress data throughout its entire life inside your company, right up to the point where you pass that data outside your company to a third party or an external CDE. So Graitec are unique in being able to offer help right across this whole life cycle of your designs and products. This webinar is one of a series of webinars. You can see there the list of the ones in the current batch. We tend to do different groups of webinars every few months, so this is halfway through this sequence. If you haven't already done so, you can go to the link at the top right there to register for the future webinars, and you can go also to get emails, register for an email telling you about all upcoming webinars all the time, so you don't miss out on any ones programmed after these. This presentation is actually available as a PDF if you go into the handouts section of the GoToWebinar panel, and if you download that PDF, all these links will be live in there, so you can just click on the links. There's no need to write them down. If you've missed any previous webinars, then all our previous webinars are recorded and are available to watch on the Advanced Steel Content Portal. So if you go there, click on that link, there are over 50 currently listed there, which you can watch on demand. That's over 40 hours worth of free information and training. This particular webinar will be recorded, or is being recorded, and will be posted on that content center as well within a few days. As well as the content center for webinars, we also publish lots of blogs. We like to give lots of bite-sized tips and tricks. Tend to be just a short bit of text and images. We've got over 100 blogs currently on our blog page exclusively for Advanced Steel. So have a look at that blog page, and if you haven't already done so, click the envelope icon to subscribe to that. So again, you get told when there's a new one there and you don't miss any of these tips and tricks. Recently, we had a Graitec UK Advanced Steel User Day online this year. We're very pleased to have Autodesk attend and join us for that as well. And each year, Graitec do a BIM Up conference. So for the last 2 years, we've had over 200 classes in those conferences. At least 20 of them were for Advanced Steel this year. All of those are recorded. So if you log into the Graitec Advantage website, all Graitec customers should have a login to the Graitec Advantage website. If you don't know yours or haven't got yours, contact your nearest office of Graitec. Log into the Advantage portal, go to videos, and you can watch any of those pre-recorded sessions from the BIMAP conference or our user day this year, or indeed the US user day last year. If you're a customer and you have a support contract with us, certainly in the UK, if you're not in the UK, check with your local office, then you should have access to the Advanced Steel Power Packs. They come as part of your support contract. The Power Pack, as I've already hinted at previously, is a suite of extra tools for Advanced Steel. Nothing you can't live without, but they automate common tasks, put in joints that are missing from the original system, clever systems, extra functionality, all for no extra cost. So definitely make sure you have that installed and running on your systems. Like I say, if you're not a Graitec UK customer, contact your local office. But if in doubt, wherever you are, contact your nearest Graitec office and ask about the Power Pack. So this particular webinar then, we're going to be looking at railings. So first of all, we're going to look at the basic railing macro that's standard in Advanced Steel. Which setting out points do you use and how do you work those out? Basic options and functions within the macro. Then we look at some finer details of getting the posts in the right positions, because that's not always obvious. And we adjust the middle rails and the balusters, or pickets, depending on which term you use, getting those in the right positions for you. And then we look at using library entries as well. Once you've got the basic railing in place, we're going to look at manipulating those railings, how we can take it a bit further. So we're going to try splitting a single macro into different panels for manufacture, or we're going to try using 2 or 3 consecutive macros to make shorter lengths of rail, but still keep everything spaced correctly, the posts and the balusters and so on, across those multiple macros. And a very common request or requirement is to create glass infill panels, sheets of glass between the posts. What's the best workflow for doing that? We'll show you and demonstrate that workflow. And finally, when you're doing some of this extra manipulation, you're going to want extra connections. So you can use custom connections to put the glass clamps in place. You can use custom connections for the saddles, for the handrail, and for connecting separate lengths of railing to each other. So we're going to look at all of those things. First of all, let's think about the basic macro. So you can see a picture of a model there. We're going to put some railings all up these stairs. First thing to remember with any macro, any of these advanced macros in Advanced Steel, they're not necessarily always going to be one click is going to create everything perfectly. But they're very good tools. They will do a lot of the work for you, but they're never going to be able to be perfect and cover absolutely every conceivable arrangement. So just think of it as if it's going to give you 85, 90% of what you need. It might give you 100%. On a lot of cases, it can give you 100%. But if it doesn't, if it's doing 85% or more, you're probably thinking, that's probably as far as I can go. You might need to do some manual tweaking beyond that. So just get used to that. It doesn't mean that you can't use the macro. And very often, it's a good idea to draw just 2D construction lines with AutoCAD lines, just to make sure you're exactly clear where you want the posts, where you want the steps and the treads on the stairs, where the different parts are. Get your basics of layout right, just using 2D lines without any restrictions. And once you know exactly where you want things, you can use the macros to create the modeled objects to match. So let's have a look at all of that in action then. So let's have a look at that in Advanced Steel. So here's a model where I've got some construction lines sketched out there for that on the stairs. You can see them in orange, marking out where I want the post and the rail to go. So we'll start off on this bottom flight. We have the basic hand railing macro up on the ribbon. We can select consecutive beams to put the railing along, so we'll select both of those. And we're going to start at the bottom and end at the top. It's important to know which way to start from. It does ask you, do you want a nosing point? Well, because the stair stringer is a little bit higher than the actual step, we need to say yes, because otherwise all the measurements will go from the top of the stringer. So I'm going to say yes, and I'll choose one of the nosing points on one of the treads as my reference for measuring the height and so on of the rails. That will ensure we get the correct railing heights. Now we've got the macro has appeared. And there's our default railing. Let's have a look at setting everything up. First of all, we'll select the post section we want. You can use almost anything for the posts. We're going to use a square hollow section, fairly small one. And then we're going to go and try and get the post spacing right. One of the first things you want to do is tick this box saying use horizontal distance on slope. It's almost impossible to get the right spacing, so everything's being measured uphill. You want to be able to measure nice simple distances on the horizontal. So tick the box, used horizontal distance on slope. I can set the start distance, that's the first post from the beginning, and that wants to be half a tread, so that'll be 115. So the treads are 230, and the last post I'm going to move in a bit from the corner, like so. Lower down, you've got this option, calculate the distance for each beam. I don't want a start and end post on every beam. I want the posts equally spaced along the entire run, from the first to the last. So if I take the tick out, don't want each beam, take the tick out, and now you can see I've just got the spacing along the whole lot. But I also want to insist I have a certain number of posts, so I'll insist on 5 posts rather than controlling the spacing, and that gives me more accurate to what I want. But let's have a closer look at the position of that first post. There's a little hiccup here. I'll zoom into a nice area. I asked for that to be across. You can see it's not lining up in my construction line where I wanted it. I've got an offset there. That's because the start point of the stair, that right ball, the string is on an angle. It's taken the start point and projected it perpendicular onto the slope of the stair. So I'm just going to measure what the distance is that I want. It's that. You see it's measuring 109 at the moment. I want to do 115. But that's because that start point is not directly above it. The start point is projected perpendicular. So I need to measure from the start point. There you go. You can see how it's been projected perpendicular to the actual point I chose. So I need to measure from that start point to the line I wanted, and its actual distance is 120 there. So I'm going to go back into the joint now. I can adjust that start distance on the posts page and put in the value I just measured. Now you can see the post is exactly on the construction line I wanted, and therefore the others will follow that spacing accurately as well. Go back to realistic presentation, much nicer. So now let's set up some middle rails and handrails and so on. So the top handrail, we can choose whatever section we want for that. Let's go for this one. It's important to get the height set correctly. So on a slope, the rail is normally not 1100 but 900 high. So I'm going to adjust that. And don't forget, we've asked for a reference point because the stringer was higher than the nosing line, so we're going to say distance from nosing point. That'll measure from our nosing point instead of measuring from the front of the stringer. So don't forget to tick that if you have that offset. For the middle rails, we can choose any section we like again, so I'll have some flat bar this time. Sideways, that's better. Get the positions right. I want 2 middle rails because I'm going to put balusters between them, so I need to get the spacing right for those as well. And on the slope, the spacings are set separately, so I need to make sure I go to that page and set the right spacings there as well. So not a 900, it's only 700 because the whole rail is a bit lower. Okay, don't need kit plates, let's turn those off. So I look at the middle rails and look at the bottom It's got the rails sticking out the end of the post there. Don't want these pieces here. So in the dialog box, I can come to this option here, or let's change that to say end at the last post. It automatically turns off those bits of rail sticking out. The top though is a little bit different. I do need them to reach the corner, so I'm going to tell it I want to adjust the length of those, and I can put in the length I want. I can have total length, which is the length from the post, or I can choose to end at a certain length offset from the end of the rail itself, so I'll be at the end of the rail, but I want to go for just a little bit in to allow for the rail going around the corner. So now let's go to the balusters page. We can turn on the balusters that we want, and again we'll choose the sections we want. So I'm going to have a 12mm round bar. Now, of course, we want a slope for the sloping portion of the rail, so we need to tick the box saying use horizontal distance on slope. Otherwise, we'll get confusing gaps again. And the gap, or the spacing of the balusters, is equally spaced, but they're based on two different centre distances, you can see here. And the centres, number one there is measuring to the centre of the post, and number two is measuring between the balusters. It's the centre distances, not the gap between them that is set in this macro. So you need to work out the values for 1 and 2 according to the gap you want. So let's have a look in wireframe again. So if you want to control this gap, you need to adjust the centre distances accordingly. Okay, let's go back into the macro. Next thing we want to set is how it bolts to the stringer. So we go to the post fixings. We're going to select plate with bolts this time round. And I'll set the parameters for that. So let's just get some decent dimensions in here. We need 1 line of bolts. That's better. And on the slope, the distances are different because of the angle, so we can set the different lengths of the plate as required. And the spacing there, and I don't need that chunky, so I'll reduce the size of these bolts. Okay, now you can also affect things, the details like how the post connects to the rail itself, and I'm going to change that. So you've got post to top rail, and I'm going to choose the cap and stall option. So that actually uses a welded end cap on the post and a welded rod for the stall. You'll see later on how you can put some saddles on that, or one alternative. So I'll just set some variables to get some sensible sizes there. This line 6 diameter of cover plate, because I'm using an SHS, it's more like the projection around the SHS, not the diameter. So at 0 projection will make it match the size of the RHS. Right, so now we've finished creating our stair or our rail how we like it. We can go into the library page and we can store this configuration for future use. Don't have to remember all those umpteen settings every time. So I'll go to the library. I can import values to store the current setup, and it's ready for selection anytime in future. Now I just go to edit, and I want to make sure I give it a sensible name in the comment column so that I can recognize what I've got in future when I want to select different configurations. Just give this a sensible name. There you go. So now that's the name of that entry, and I can have various entries for various different configurations. Okay, so let's view the key points of that. So first of all, especially if you're working on a slope, you're never going to get your posts in the right place if you're forgetting to tick this box. Use horizontal distance on slope. If that's not ticked, you're measuring up the slope, and unless you're obsessed with doing trigonometry, it's going to be nigh on impossible to get all the right spacings. So the first thing you want to do is tick that box there if you're working on a slope supporting beam. Second option there, which people often miss, is the calculate distance for each beam. If you've got a long railing across several supporting beams, then you might probably want to maintain an equal spacing as you go along all those beams. If that's the case, then you need to make sure that you tick this or untick this box. If this box is ticked, then each beam will have its own start post and end post and spacing in the middle. So each beam will be a separate railing with separate spacings. If you untick that, you get one spacing, one continuous railing. Use the nosing for the reference point. When you've got a stair, it's usual for the top of the stringer to be slightly proud or slightly above the nosing line. So if you forget to tick this box, then you're measuring from the top of the stringer, so all the heights will be a little bit higher than you expect them to be from the tread. If you want to keep control of the heights from the tread, you should have said yes to the option to pick a reference point during placing the railing, and then remember to tick this option here so that it actually measures from that reference point, not from the top of the stringer. And the final key point to review here is the middle rails on the last post and the end post and so on. You can control those using these two options at the bottom of the middle handrail horizontal page, so you get the correct amount of middle rail. You can turn off those bits sticking out, or you can control how long they are and get them correct as you want. So that's the basic first railing into our model. But now we want to manipulate that and do more things with that and create more railings around the other parts of the model. When we're doing this demo, look out for these points. First of all, you don't need to delete the joint box. People get a bit trigger happy with deleting the joint box when it's not necessary. At no point during any of these demos do I delete any joint boxes, but we still get the railings we want. So you do not need to delete the joint box to modify the elements within the joint. You can change welds created by the railing joint. They're all available to edit. So if you click on the weld, you can change it from a shop weld to a site weld. That will help you break the railing into separate lengths. The railing macro can be used even if you're doing glass infill panels. The macro can't do the infill panels, but it can still do the posts, and it can do the top rail, and if necessary a kick rail or whatever else you want, so that you just have to put the glass in later. And even if the macro won't do everything for you, like it won't do infill panels, you can still use the macro to create most of what you want, and then do manual editing on top of that to finish it off. And you can copy elements from within the macro to elsewhere, such as balusters from the middle panel to the end to complete your work. And you can use custom connections to add commonly used configurations into that railing. So time to have a look at all that in action. Let's get that demo going. We're going to take this first bit of railing, and if I check the assembly here, you can see it's all turned red, so it's all one big assembly at the moment, one big panel. But I don't want that to be one big panel, I want to split that up into smaller pieces. So let's clear our marking. And the first thing I want to do is separate the handrail from everything else. So if I zoom in, it's easier to see in 2D. You can select the welds that hold the handrail to the posts. Select all of them. And then go to properties. And I can actually change that weld from a shop to a site weld. And then the railing won't be part of the assembly. So if I select that, you can see now just the bottom bits, the assembly, and the handrails are separate components. So that's handy. I also want to split the bottom portion up though. So I can go to the weld that holds that middle rail, turn off the marking, that holds the middle rail to the post. I can select those two welds and set those to site welds as well. it's realistic. Check the assemblies. And now you can see that bottom portion is one assembly and the top portion is a separate assembly. So I now have 3 separate assemblies instead of one big assembly. Haven't exploded the macro, I've just adjusted the welds. So it's a really nice, easy, quick way to divide up your railing conveniently. And another way you can do separate lengths of railing to manage the panels is to actually use the macro in separate occasions. So on this platform here, I've marked out where I want some posts on the white dots. I'm going to use the railing macro to go between these different dots. There's the first post, that's the end. I'm not going to go all the way in one here, I'm going to split it into 2 portions. So I use the macro, it's on that beam, and I'm going to select from the start point. I'm going to go to where the post needs to be here, and check the nosing point. Oh, not this time. There's a basic rail, but I've already stored a library entry with my preference for the side mounted rail, so I'm just going to go to the library and select my preference there. So you can see how a library is going to really help get things close as possible to what you want. Here we go, after a few seconds. There you go, that's much closer to what I want, side mounted and so on. And of course I need to adjust the post spacings accordingly. So the first post is 200 from the start, I'm happy with that. But that last post, what I'm going to do actually, I'm going to make sure I move the railing on. I need to get the middle portion between this and the next portion of railing. So I'm going to move the end point. I'm going to add 800mm, which moves it up nearly to the next post. Or basically to the side of the next post. And then I'm going to move the post itself back 800 from the end, so it's back in the position I asked for, which was where I clicked as the end point in the first place. So there you go, now it's falling on the dot, and the middle one naturally falls in the equally spaced in the middle there. So I've got these bits sticking out now, the middle rails projecting on and the top rail projecting on, ready to meet up with the next section of railing when I get that created. So I can finish this one, go back to the macro, same beam, and this time I'm going to use these markers for where I want the posts on the second portion of the railing. And once again I'll choose the desired library entry to get it pretty close. This will do most of my settings, and I just have to tweak the ends again. So this time I'm going to adjust the start point, so I need to move that up so that it meets the other handrail where that ended. So now the post has jumped along, so I've moved the end 200mm up. So you can see the top rails now meet end to end. But I've got this spare bit of middle rail here. I'll come back to that in a moment. At the other end, I want that to end on the dot, so I'm going to move the end distance to 0 so the post goes exactly onto the dot I chose for the end point. And the middle one falls in the right spacing again. So now I'll go and find the middle rail, and I can say at either end, at the right hand end I need to set it to last post so you don't get any phantom pieces of railing there, and at the first start point I need to change it to last post. And that will remove the unwanted piece of extra rail in the middle there. So I've only got one piece either side there. So that's done most of that work for me. And you can see I've got one panel here. And check the other one. That's all one panel up to that point. So now I need to copy those balusters, so I can use transform elements, or you might know it as advanced copy in other countries. Make sure include additional connections is selected. I can select all the balusters in one panel, so I know they're equally spaced. I can copy them from one post to the next post. And that's putting all those infill panels. So I've manually copied them, but I've put them all in and they're still going to be welded up, and you can see they're still part of that railing. So I've not had to destroy the macro, the other railing's fine as well, ending at the right points. At no point have I had to destroy the macros, the joint boxes are still intact and they're still editable as macros. The only thing you have to do is adjust those infill balusters or pickets if you change the post spacing. Now we're going to come down to this landing, and I'm going to create another piece of railing here. This time we're going to do some glass infill panels. So I'll just put on a basic railing to start with. And as we've said earlier, the joint we have here, or the macro here, cannot actually do infill panels. But I'm going to choose a glass infill library entry I've got. Just use this tube to give me as much as I can without the actual glass. It won't do the glass, but I still use this to create the top rail and the posts for me. So that's nice and easy. I could also do the post fixing to the stringer and so on within this joint. So it can still do a lot of work for me. But now I need to create the glass, so I'm going to put my UCS on the centre line of the railing and rotate it accordingly. And I'm going to create one piece of plate, just an ordinary piece of plate, right across, using the top and bottom of the post as my reference. I need this to be 12 thick, and I want the material, make sure that's set to others, and glass. And the positioning is going to be on the centre line. Now this is using my model template, and there's another class about model templates. Here I've got a layer called glass, so if I move that to the glass layer, it looks like glass, it's clear, it doesn't look like a piece of steel or the other steel plates. So that's nice. Now I'm going to move in the edges of that. I don't know, I'm clashing with the tubes, so I'm just going to move the top down a bit, the bottom up a bit, and either side can come in 40mm from the post. So I've shrunk that plate down to a sensible size, and that gives me most of the offset. So I just need to divide it up now, so I can use split plate by 2 points. I'll split that plate. I can tell it I want a gap, so I give a gap of 80, then that'll give me 40 either side of the points I choose, so I can pick the post there, straight down, repeat that for the next portion, pick the post, straight down. And now if I go back to realistic, you can see that I've got 3 identical pieces of glass in position there. Nice, quick and easy way to create those. So check out my other class about model templates. Now that glass is not being held to the post with anything at the moment, it's just floating in space, so we need to attach that somehow. So we can actually use custom connections for doing this, and I've made some earlier. So I can go to the custom connections, and I've created in here the double glass lug connection suitable for this post, so I can select that, select the post, and there you go, it's placing in my lugs for me. If I take a closer look and go to wireframe, you can see that I've got a special part for the lug, I've got a special part for the bolt here, and I've filled in all the properties for that. And I've also got a special part for the sleeve or riv nut or whatever you call them in there as well. So I've got 3 special parts, and I've got the hole in the post itself, and that's being created in 4 positions correctly for me, all in one move with that custom connection. So it'll be very quick to place that all around to get the clamps right. Also I've put a dummy weld there to weld them to the post, so if I select mark the assembly, you can see that it's showing those as part of that railing assembly. It's up to you whether you do that. I like to show them in the assembly. Other uses of custom connections, if I come up to the top here, is where these 2 pieces of railing join. So I want to connect those middle panels onto the railing, and I can choose my prepared joint here, the running rail joint, and I choose the members in the right order, said post first then the rail, and again there you go, it's cut back the middle rail by 5mm, it's put in the extra lug, it's put the screw between them and the welds and so on, so that makes a nice tidy little joint. And if I select the right assembly, you can see the lug is part of the right assembly, so it's all as required. Now the post, the spigot on top of the post and the handrail are welded to each other, and we want those to be with it bolted on saddle, so I can choose again the right custom connection that I've created, the stem saddle. I just say okay there, I can choose the hand railing and the stem, and it places in that little modelled part I've created there with a couple of screws so that I can hold those on. So that's fixed piece, not a special part, that's a fabricated piece. The last one I want to do is connect the two rails end to end like this. So one last joint, and again I can just go for the straightforward connector, and I pick the two pieces of handrail, and that's put in the joint for me. So again, let's have a quick look in 2D so you can see through things. And you can see in the middle there, it's put in a special part for the connector, the joiner, and it's made the holes in the railings as is required for that to fit into. So a handful of custom connections can really make this life easier, and because they're adding features or adding things onto the members, they're not deleting members, you can still do that with maintaining the full macro ability of the railings. The joint boxes are still there in every case. Okay then, so let's review what we did in that. Some points to remember. So you can go straight to the weld, double click on the weld within the railing macro, and you can change the location from shop to site. And that will help you separate different portions of the railing from each other so that you can split it into separate lengths or separate panels. You can copy elements from inside the macro to outside the macro. So if you want balusters and you don't get balusters on the end bit where you've got the little bit of middle rail sticking past the end post, then you can copy the balusters from inside to those end sections or whatever you want, just to save them to model them all from scratch. It's very quick to copy. You can add your own custom connections. You'd have to make your own connections in advance, but they're not particularly complicated, any of them. They can make life very much easier. Even though the main components are created by the macro, you can still add features and things to them, so you can still add the custom connections onto those members so that you can create the final railing you want. And once again, we did not delete a single joint box or explode any macros any time during any of that modeling. So you rarely need to actually delete the joint box. You can add your own features and add your own elements on top without damaging the existing joint. So that should you need to edit, it won't edit the manual stuff you've added, but it will still be able to edit most of it for you within the macro. So all of the tools I've shown you today are part of standard advanced steel. There's nothing special, nothing extra there. Those tools are very nice, but they can't do absolutely everything. Graitec do produce an extra suite of tools for advanced steel known as PowerPack Professional. That has lots of extra joints, I think it's 30 or something extra joints, and macros and things for advanced steel, such as exploding the model easily or exploding parts and so on, that are useful extra tools on top of the basic advanced steel functions. We also release or offer an enhanced power pack called PowerPack Premium that has extra tools for stairs and railings particularly. So when you look at the standard power pack ribbon, you'll see there's a button there, the stairs and railings vault. Everything inside that vault is part of this extra enhanced set of tools, and they are very powerful. Those railings can do everything we've done in this joint, in this model, as a single macro. So you could do the infill panels within those railings. You could do multiple segments split in the railing anywhere you wish within those segments. And as I say, that's known as the PowerPack Premium. So that is an extra cost for the premium level power pack. My colleague Rob has done another webinar similar to this one. It's the same model and very similar railings he does, but he shows you how to use the power pack tools, those premium tools. And you can see how much more powerful they are and how many more options they offer. They really are very good tools. If you want to watch that presentation, that's been recorded as part of the BIM Up conference. So go to Graitec Advantage, log in and go to Videos BIM Up Conference 2020 and find the secrets to PowerPack Premium railings. You can watch that at your leisure. So, getting advanced steel is not just install and forget and run it to get the best efficiency. There are a number of steps to making the most out of your advanced steel, and we split it into 5 steps basically. I should hope most of you have had basic training with us. You really need to get training with advanced steel. It's a complicated system, it's a specialized system, and far from making it simpler, the more specialized the system is, the more training you need. because you need to put in exactly right inputs to get the best output. So make sure you've had training if you haven't already. But that's just the first step on your journey to becoming the most efficient at production you can with advanced steel. You also need to implement it properly. By that we mean things like doing your drawing borders and title blocks, getting your bombs set up how you like them, changing some of these default settings inside the system to get everything set up, optimized for your company to make it work efficiently and fluidly. But beyond that basic setup, there's then other things you can do. The rules that create the drawings are obviously going to have to walk a middle line. They're not going to suit everybody because, like it or not, everybody does drawings differently. So they're a kind of middle ground. But we can customize those rules to make them do drawings the way you like them. So vastly reducing the editing time. And if you do, say, 3 days editing on the drawings on a typical project, we'd be disappointed if we can't save at least a day of that editing time by customizing the rules to reduce that editing. Things you would edit manually are now done automatically. We can also do other things in your database. Step 4, we can add things like extra bolts and screws and so on. We can do adding special sections. We can create some of these custom connections like those saddles and lugs and things for the railings for you. We can edit your preferred sizes. We can do all sorts of things inside the database to make it follow what you need. BIM level 2 numbering and file naming. If you want that, we can sort all that out. And finally, if you've got a lot of customization going on, you need to make sure every user in your company is using the same customization and getting the same results. Otherwise, chaos will reign. So we can help you with sharing that data around your company between all the users, perhaps making batch files and things to make sure that it's regularly maintained and all users keep on that correct data set. So there's more than one level. Don't just install it and run with it out of the box. If you want to make the most of your advanced steel and make it most efficient with your investment, talk to Graitec about these other steps and we'd be delighted to try and help you to gradually maximize your efficiency there. So now we have a quick chance, a few minutes to talk about any questions. I've seen one's come through. Let's see if I can read that. Okay, that's just a comment. Hopefully the sound was okay. You're saying it had gone a bit quiet at one point. Seemed to work for everybody else. Can the standard railing macro do side palm mounted to a toe of a channel? No, it can't, not in the standard macro. It can do side mounted with a plate, but it won't go through the toes. So if it's on a channel, it'd be great if you're on the web. If you're across the toes, it will try to bolt all the way through the channel to the other side, which is not great. So you might want to just say, choose the option. They'll be on the side, so it'll be on the left or the right for the post position. And you would probably just set the option to be direct welded for the post connection, and that will give you the chance to extend the post down the right height, but not put any plates on. Then you'd have to change those welds to site, because obviously it's not literally welded straight to the channel. And you could add a custom connection to put the toe plate in and the palm plate on the side of the rail. You'd have to adjust the offset of the railing to allow for the thickness of the palm plate you want to put on. Any other questions coming through? I can't see any others turning up yet. You're welcome, Marcus. Okay, so this webinar has been recorded. You can watch it again after a few days. It will turn up on the Content Center. Hope you've enjoyed that, and that completes our presentation today.